أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بفضل الله قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه المجيد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
You have to pardon me, my throat is a bit sore and it's a bit stuck with this weather. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, the descended book, the Quran, the book that we accept as Muslims to be his words, different to other books where they are the words of men who've written down narrations that they believe was from a certain prophet, or that was developed in a council many years after the coming and going of that prophet. We have the words that are directly scribed from Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi with the hands of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And the Quran is a book that's widely remembered and revised, and people as young as 5 can actually recite it from cover to cover. There's a uniqueness to the Quran. And the Quran has no contradiction. Many times, and even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he posits the challenge that this book, if you find any contradiction, bring it up. Let's talk about it. 14 years later, we're waiting. Many have tried, by the way. If you look up contradictions in the Quran, there are websites about it, but then you get Muslims coming commenting, and it's very easy to disable the argumentation. So, looking at the Quran in that way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this ayah, which is, whoever glorifies the symbols of Allah, it's from the piety or taqwa of their qulub or their heart, right? That a person, the more they increase in their faith, they understand that the symbols of their religion become important. In high school, I know that when a brother was becoming more religious, he'd go in for the blonde tips, back when I was in high school, that's what was cool, the undercuts and all that. Like all the Lebo guys used to dress like that. And I went to school in Marylands, went to school in Guildford, Parramatta. That's how they used to dress, right? They would become more religious. Right away, the Sayf of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam would go around their neck. You'd straight away see the sword on the neck. It's a symbol of Iman. He's Amir, he's a prince of the believers. They held that symbol. And then they become more religious and they start wearing the dishdasha and they start wearing, the hadda maybe if they want to go overboard. Then eventually they realize that you don't have to do all of that to be religious, but they realize they just want to cover themselves with symbology because their hearts are becoming more pious. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates this. Now, if you don't mind, Salah ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Likewise, the symbols in our religion don't just extend to the clothing. And we know that if you go to many mosques, this mosque is mostly, if I'm not mistaken, it's Afghani or it's Pakistani. I think the ones that frequent here the most. You notice the sha'a'ir have the cultural tinge of people from Pakistan or from Afghanistan. You go to a Zahra mosque inside Uncliffe, it's it has a Lebanese tinge to it. If you go to the ones in Graham Hall, it's more Iraqi. And you'll notice that although the tinges are there, the main things are identifiable. The name of Ali on the walls, for example, alayhi salam. So it extends not just to what we wear, but it extends also to our architecture. And one of the most important architectural, we'll say, places is, of course, the two holy cities. It's Mecca and Medina. And inside Medina, today we come to remember the Baqi, or Jannatul Baqi, which is essentially a graveyard, which was a graveyard in the time of the Prophet. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he blessed this place with his dua, his footsteps, and the burials of many members of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and the Ashab from the Muhajirun and the Ansar. And for us, we've been arguing this point for a long time. But what I'm going to do is go through a bit of history. I'm going to take you through it. Some people have a great knowledge on the Baqi, some people probably still learning. I mean, if you go back the early 1900s, around 1918, when you look at the fall of the Ottoman Empire, so the last known Muslim superpower on earth that had an influence all over the world was the Ottoman Empire, the Turks. And when they fell at the hands of the British, we found that there was a big power vacuum in two holy cities, inside what we call today Saudi Arabia, but of course, since history in the time of Rasulullah, it's Al-Hijaz. In fact, Saudi Arabia became named Saudi Arabia after Al Saud, who took power in Saudi Arabia. They literally named the country after their family. Interesting, if you were to name Australia after your family, just like that, only 100 years ago, or a bit more, it's recorded history. Either way, in 1925, in 8th of Shawwal, so a week after Shahr Ramadan, this has become a huge point for us, a part of our identity, of who we identify with, our symbols, and who we are as people, as Muslims. And Muslims across the globe, from Sunni and Shia, who see the big travesty that has happened, in that the Baqi, which if any of you have been to Hajj inside Medina, once you enter the main door, you go down this long corridor, then you pass the Rawda, so the member of Rasulullah and his maqam, the zari that he has, the tarikh. And then you go to the shrine, you do your very quick salam to Rasulullah. You can't hang on to it like we do with the imams because they don't allow you. And you exit, and to your right you find the Baqi. And the Baqi, before 1925, when the Wahhabis really they enforced their ideology on people, and they started to demolish all these symbols that we have. Go look it up. Go to Google and look up the Baqi before 1925. Every single Muslim society, Sunni or Shia, that maintained the Baqi gave it beautiful shrines and beautiful domes, and there were gardens, and people would visit and pray for the dead. Of the people that are buried there, the notable people, and there's a huge list, and I was going through and I found it hard to keep up with the amount of people that are buried there that we find important in Islam. But it's enough, if we had one spot in Sydney that we know Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stood there, he says, Allahumma barik ahli Sydney, he made a dua for us. We know for a fact that will become the biggest shrine. We put a circle around it, we build something, the government would probably allow us to do this, build a little maqam here, and do visitations, just to know where the Prophet has stood. If you go to a ziyarah, and you go to inside the Masjid of Kufa or Sahla, they'll mark places where important things happen, where Imam Ali salam was martyred, or when many of the Anbiya inside the Sahla mosque actually stood and prayed, and you literally stand where Rasulullah stood, literally, and pray 2 rakat on the beautiful blessed ground he put his head upon. He would stop at the Baqi and say, Assalamu ala ahli la ilaha illallah, min ahli la ilaha illallah, ya ahli la ilaha illallah, bihaqqi la ilaha illallah. So we know that the Prophet would be testifying words of Tawheed at the Baqi. And in fact, we have narrations that say that the Prophet would stand every night. He'd go to the Baqi, say his salams, and he'd leave. Of the people in the Baqi, Imam al-Hasan ibn Ali alayhi salam, Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abidin, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. We have 4 imams, 4. As you enter the Baqi, if you look to your right, you will notice that there are 4 of them, all right next to each other. When there was a big shrine built around them, it was just one cage. If you go to the ziyarah in Iraq, if you go to the Kazimiyya, you'll notice that you've got 2 imams, you've got 2 domes, and then you've got one cage around them. So very similar, 4 imams. Of the other notable people that you have is Fatima bint Asad, which is the beloved mother of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And even to the extent where when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he buried the mother of Imam Ali, he dug her grave with his own hands. Then he climbs into the grave and he sleeps in her grave as to remove it from any harm. Because the earth that the Prophet touches, they say that that grave won't squeeze and won't hurt. And then he even he raised his hand to the sky after he awoke. He raised his hand. He says, Allahumma bihaqqi nabi wal anbiya min qabli illa ghafarta al-Umm Fatima bint Asad wa basata alayha madkhalaha. He says, Allah, by the right of your Prophet and all the prophets from before, that you forgive Fatima bint Asad and you expand upon her her entry. Inshallah. Sorry, with the salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Just be closer. Okay, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And even to the extent when he put his hand on her grave after burial, he said, Rahimakallah, ya ummi ba'da ummi. And may Allah have mercy upon you, my mother after my mother. You see, the age of 6, the Prophet was under the care of Fatima bint Asad. And the care after his mother Amina alayhi salam died. And he was also under the care of Abi Talib as well, and his grandfather Abdul Muttalib alayhi salatu wasalam ajma'in. The first man buried in the Baqi is Ahmad ibn Zurara from the Ansar, who was a companion in Islam, one of the ashab that we're indebted to. Of the Muhajirun, there's a very revered companion named Uthman bin Mad'un, who was one of the friends of Rasulullah. You know, sometimes we see the Prophet in this apex and he's like this untouchable person, but we forget he had mates and he had friends, people he had held dear. And Uthman was one of his mates, Uthman bin Mad'un. And he was actually a friend of Rasulullah before he announced his prophethood. So he always liked him, you know. He always trusted him, he was a Sadiq al-Amin to him. They were good friends. He was buried there. Even to the extent where when he was buried, according to historians like Ibn Jubayr or al-Samhuti, Uthman's grave, Uthman bin Mad'un, the Prophet actually made a symbol, he put a rock there, and he told people, visit Uthman bin Mad'un, visit him. So you notice that the ziyarat that we do for the alayhi salatu wasalam, it also actually applies to many people that the Prophet indicated to us. Like the shuhada of Karbala, they're not prophets, they're not imams, but they're holy people. So the idea that the reverence of the dead, the respect we pay for people that pass away. You know, you look at, for example, on Anzac Day rather, every year they try to bring an Anzac to see if one is still living. They try to take them into the parade. They respect their dead. Although, you know, if you look in history, when they sent the poor Australians onto the coast inside Gallipoli, it was a massacre. They gave them the wrong coordinates. Instead of sending them to a flat land, they sent them to a beach at the bottom of a mountain. The Turks had them in their sights, and they just machine gun droves and droves and droves. And we weren't there to defend Australia in a direct way, we were there for our allies. So it was a poor operation. But still, although there was no real victory for the Australians, they still revere their dead, have respect for their dead. And many countries have respect for their dead. You know, even after, you know, with the Americans after the Iraq War, many Iraqis, well, 500,000 Iraqis died after the invasion. Of course, the Americans brought back their dead and they revered them and things like that. Even years later, they realized they only went in on a false premise, and in fact they didn't have to die. There was nothing noble about that war or that invasion rather. They still revere them. So even if people are in the wrong, we revere them as human beings. So what a travesty that we as Muslims, Shia, but first and foremost as Muslims in general, that we have literally hundreds, now thousands of buried Muslims in the graveyard. You know, has anyone been to the Baqi? Actually been there. You'll notice that the graves are only just dirt and molds of, if you see the pictures. Go to Rookwood Cemetery. Go to Rookwood. It's one of the most beautiful, honestly, if you want to relax, go to Rookwood Cemetery. Sit with all the past Muslims. It's a very spiritual experience. Everyone who goes to Rookwood and they see all their brothers and sisters and you say Fatiha for them, you feel it. So the issue of Baqi isn't just about our symbols that are being attacked and our heritage. It's also that we're being robbed of experiencing, having a place to relax and reflect about life. Having a place to relax and reflect. We don't come from a religion where we're afraid of death. Our religion prepares us for death. We embrace it, just part of the transition. Death is part of life, actually. You know, you leave the womb of your mother crying, you know, this little sphere that you were in, all of a sudden got bigger, became Earth, became the universe. And then you die and you enter a bigger place. In fact, it's bigger. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The footstool of Allah is the expanse of the heavens and this earth. a very small aspect of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, these things are figurative. But the footstool of Allah is bigger than this universe, as big. Inshallah. Wa salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Of course, the Prophet indicated to people who's buried in the Baqi. You know, when you walk in, we mentioned the 4 imams. There are many Ma'asumin, Abbas, uncle of the Prophet. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi buried his son Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he was of the first of his members of his family to be buried inside the Baqi, and he wept over him. The mother of Imam alayhi salam, when he entered to the left, Bani alayhi salam, who gave Abbas, Shaf al-Hawm, and Uthman in Karbala. Yeah, so again, we believe that when people die, it's just not the end, and that there is some sort of an attachment. And that attachment, it's something that kind of talks to the heart. You know, many people have gone on ziyarah and they've had a conversation. You know, I always say like my wife is half Iraqi. You know, I say Iraqis make me laugh on ziyarah. She's like, why? I go, well, you have these old ladies, they walk into Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, and they just like mouth off, man, they just go off, and just, Abbas, I will not forgive you if you don't do this for me. I will not forgive you. Astaghfirullah, no, freak out. Allah, we're taught adab, walk in barefoot and khushu and khudu, and these ladies just walk in and they just yell at and then there's a story of a lady who walked in. She says, I won't forgive you unless you show me where my son is. And the son just starts crying out of nowhere. She says, what's that I'm thinking? She walks off. This is the casual, deep belief. You know, it's funny, but this woman's iman must be through the roof. You know, we walk in with doubts. Is he there? Isn't he there? Sometimes we think, is he actually? The Quran says that don't consider one who dies in the way of Allah as dead, but or you know, with Allah receiving sustenance. In another ayah, they are alive, but you don't perceive them, but they perceive you for sure. This lady walks in with full iman in that ayah. And things happen, miracles happen, people walk, people learn how to speak again. So the issue of graves isn't just are they dead and it's a burial thing and it's a cultural thing. There's a reality behind it. There's a true reality and we feel it. And all of our relationships on this earth, even us as friends, as brothers, we don't look at our relationships as purely logical, that yes, he's a human being, we have shared common interests, he eats and I eat, so we eat together. That's not how we feel about each other. You feel something when you meet people, you get vibes, you get energy from it. There's a lot of science behind this. There's consciousness. And consciousness remains even at the graves. So again, another thing to consider at the Baqi, when you don't have an environment that allows you to sit and to reflect and to talk and to open your heart, when you go to pray, if you're in a hurry, other boys are coming, we hit the cafe soon, I got 10 minutes, I got 5 minutes. Your salah's not the same, as opposed to you got, it's on time, you finish work early, you know what I mean? If you climb off site at 3 p.m, it's like beautiful, there's no traffic, you get home by 5:15, you're sweet, you pray, right? It feels different. The actions were the same, the words were the same. You did everything that you would normally do, but how different was the feeling? This old lady once told me, she says, very simple lady, very pious lady. She's she's come from the villages. In all of our cultures, we have people of the villages, and people tease them and laugh at them and things like that. This lady, I tell you, has, I believe, an upper hand on many people that are knowledgeable about Allah, because of her simpleness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how there's no doubt in her mind. She said, once I was praying, and I felt like I left my body and I just walked into the universe. And I think the amount of Arafah that want this experience, they sit in them, they do i'tikaf for a long period of time, and this amal, they want to see the Imam. This lady in her simplicity just had such a simple, clear, concise prayer with Allah. She went through a lot of hardship in her life. And I said to her, I said, Wallah, I said, Niyalik, you're so lucky. Inshallah, we can get to that point. But there is a spiritual experience, right? And we've all felt it, we just kind of don't talk about it, but it's there. And an interesting story, like where the shuhada are kept is very important too. And in the Baqi, besides just going through a few names, we have the auntie of the Prophet, named Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, like I said, Banin. In that area, not in the Baqi, we're not sure, but in that area of Medina is Fatima al-Zahra. The Shuhada al-Harra, so after the issue of Karbala and the travesty, the tragedy, and things that occurred in Karbala, Yazid's army moved into Medina for 3 days. They raped and they pillaged, and blood was in the streets, right? So many Shuhada al-Harra, which were the people that died under the sword of Yazid, were also buried there. And the Shuhada of Uhud, of course. Where martyrs are buried is another stranger experience. If you go to Iran one day, there's a graveyard called Behesht Zahra, or the Garden of Zahra alayhi salam. Just go to that place. Literally, I believe there's about 200,000 martyrs from the 8-year war with Iraq, about 200,000 if not more. Look at the miracles that happened there, just openly. I went there with my sister. I said, I've been here before, but I want to take you to this particular grave. She's like, why? I go, just take a look. This is just a miracle, it just happens. It's not about your mind, they say you have to believe it first to see it. It's not one of those things. It's just one of those Iranians just lining up to throw water at this guy. So what happens, you go to this grave, and you throw water on the grave. Now before I threw water, I checked it, I wiped my hand, no smell, no incense, it smells like tiles, blood. So they say they believe, it just smells like tiles, blood. I throw water on it, I go, my sister, I go, smell it. She goes, I smell flowers. Lord. Okay, yeah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed this grave that whoever throws water on this thirsty person, it smells like flowers. This is just the maqam of a shaheed. Why are they so adamant? And why did they destroy the Baqi? So we've talked about the spirituality that's available in graveyards in general, the Ahlul Bayt, so many of them are there. Why? The Wahhabi school of thought, which, as we said in 1925, Al-Saud, along with the theology of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, they took over and they forced their opinion. Their opinion is that if you pay respect to a grave, you're worshipping, it's shirk, it's polytheism. That is to seek that there's a benefit from someone that was dead. Which you can understand, but it's a very, very simple interpretation of the Quran and Islam. Because the Prophet himself is a shafi'. And in fact, I'm going to go through a few of the ahadith in that regard. And that no one goes to a grave to worship. You go to Karbala, if you go to Najaf, if you go to Mashhad, no one's worshipping the Imam. They seek shafa'ah with the Imam, atawassul with the Imam. He intercedes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has never been removed from the picture. And the argument we have is, no one before you guys ever said there was a problem with this. The Sunnis that ran the place for over 1,000 years, they never had an issue. It was part of the madhab. In fact, the Turks and the influence of the Sufis believe in tawassul. They understand it's part of the Quran. Who they seek that tawassul to is a contentious issue for us, but in principle it's there. So no Islamic school has ever considered what we do there as haram or sinful or worship or shirk. They considered it as a form of shirk or worship. So not only did they wipe out the Baqi, they go to Mecca and destroy many heritage sites. In 20 years, 400 sites that are important to Islam. Even the birth house of Rasulullah was destroyed, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The tombs of Hamza and the martyrs of Uhud, of course, they were demolished as well. The only shrine that really remained was the shrine of Rasulullah, because there was a backlash. And they say that Rasulullah is khat ahmar, is a red line. You don't go near the Prophet. There would have been a backlash. They played politics, they left it there. Even though the Prophet said himself, I want to be buried in my masjid. And between my maqam and my qabr is a rawda, is a piece of heaven. Between my mimbar and my grave. And he pointed himself in his own masjid. Now look at the arrogance. And you know what's interesting? If we're not allowed to worship in places where people are buried, first things first, the rawda is the first to go. Where you actually pray in a piece of heaven next to the Prophet. But the greatest masjid we have on earth is the Kaaba. It's the holiest of all of our masajid. The Masjid al-Haram has many prophets buried there. Many prophets. In Hajj Ismail alayhi salam is buried there. So you're literally walking on graves when you do tawaf. You know, on many parts of tawaf, you're crossing over dead people. So if it's haram to pray where people are buried, why do we pray in the Kaaba still? So we know that they know this. It's so simple, but there is a destruction of our heritage. You know, you can never know the inner unless you have an outer to deal with first. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we would have known how great his soul was until we saw his actions. You can't know that your mate's a good mate or a bad mate unless you actually see their actions they possess. What's in their soul comes out later. You see it. If you destroy the maqamat, you're robbing a person of thinking of doing a tawassul or seeking shafa'ah. And you know, it's funny, the issue of shafa'ah, they're seeking intercession with the Prophet. If you're covered in sins from head to toe, if you're from the ummah of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he says, even a big hadith inside his masjid in Medina, he says, Shafa'ati li ahli al-kaba'ari min ummati. My intercession are for the people that have the greatest sins from among my ummah. It's big letters, big hadith. So the idea of shafa'ah not being there is also challenged. You know, Ashab al-Kahf, the people of the cave, who is aware of their story, Ashab al-Kahf, that they slept for a long time and they'd awoken, a miracle to mankind. They said, the people that actually had influence, they said, construct a building over them. Their Lord knows best about them. Those who prevailed over their affairs said, let us surely build a masjid over them. This is somewhere in Jordan. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used this ayah as an example, and he said that Ashab al-Kahf were actually an astonishing and amazing group of youth, that they built a masjid on top of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't rebuke the person saying that when the ayah appears in the Quran. Allah doesn't follow with, but he shouldn't have said that. It's common. So we know that in the Quran, using our reason, the only reason that's left is that, you know, they were trying to destroy Islam or the influence of Islam the same way they have done to other religions in the past. You know, if you look at Europe, you can't say it's a Christian Europe anymore. To the discontent of many Europeans that are faithful Christians, to their discontent, it's more secularized. They have not been able to secularize Muslims according to their law. It's been very difficult, and the Western world hasn't been able to do that. They said, we can't take Muslims off their religion. It's so hard, we're very stubborn perhaps, or maybe because the religion's so potent and strong. But they said, what we can do is keep the image of their religion, but slowly change what they believe. You see that? The first thing they started with, once the Ottomans fell and the British were inputting the new sheikhs there and things like that, the first thing they do was destroy their symbols. This is a political move. We know that we can't bring it back until, of course, the two holy cities are freed. But we're going to raise awareness. And you guys as youth, you need to understand you have such a beautiful heritage. And your heritage just doesn't stop at Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It goes back to Adam alayhi salam. And that raising awareness is important. And protests happen all over the world. And inshallah one day we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free the people in Saudi Arabia who are oppressed by their leadership. They're oppressed not only with their money, but they're oppressed with knowledge. They hide history from you. that they're oppressed, that they're not given the opportunity to learn about Muhammad and Al Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove all the oppressors of this earth. We're in such a funny time right now. We don't know when war's going to break out, and nuclear war's going to break out. The best thing we can do, we always talk about global issues and we feel this weight on our shoulders, and what can I do? It reminds me of a story, when Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was caught and, he was not showing respect to the idols there, and you know the story of Abraham, he knocked all the idols and put the hammer on the neck of the biggest one. And they were setting up this huge fire to burn him, and the miracle that the fire didn't actually burn him. And the fire was, this mountain of fire was so tall that they needed a catapult to throw him in. Like it wasn't a small deal. Ibrahim alayhi salam's tied up and he's chilling, really. He was relaxed about it. He said, make dua, Ibrahim. He said, he actually said, if I'm not mistaken, that Allah knowing about me is enough. He knows the situation. Why should I have to ask him? He knows. One narration says that a frog was drinking water and hopping and trying to spit onto this flame. And Ibrahim, with prophets, they have that connection. Like some of them are given the ability to speak with animals, like King Solomon or the prophet. King Solomon, I should say, alayhi salam, who could speak asfur, spoke bird, he can control the winds, spoke the jinn. Ibrahim alayhi salam was talking to this frog. He says, why are you spitting such a little amount of water on this massive fire? You can't turn it out. He says, it's enough for me that I'm doing my duty to Allah. I'm not going to do it. I know I can't. But I'm spitting this little bit of water so I can say to Allah in the akhirah, I saw your prophet in danger and I tried to do something. For us, you have to raise awareness. And the greatest way you challenge the ideology that's destroyed the history that we have is be that good neighbor. Rasulullah was a good neighbor. The Ahlul Bayt were great people. They were loving people, they were helpful. They saw the people of sin, and most of the time they weren't harsh with them. In fact, if they were ever harsh with the Muslims who knew what was right from wrong, the people that were ignorant, they showed so much mercy to them. When the Prophet goes to Taif and he tries to preach Islam and they stone him from head to toe and he's bleeding from head to toe, he sits alone in the desert, he says, Allah forgive my people, they don't know. A lot of people that we live with, they don't know. When they search Islam online, what do they say? When they search Shia online, what's the first thing they get? Swords hitting heads and guys opening up their backs and crazy stuff like that. They don't see the light, the nur of the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. They don't see the amount of science that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq gave to the Western world. Now, every computational device that we have is credited to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. All the great Muslim scientists that came up with, say, algorithms and GPS systems, it all stems to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the sixth Imam. And literally the Western world is indebted to an Imam of ours. Literally. I think of all the points I've made, and I don't want to go too long because I know these lectures have become very draining and perhaps my energy isn't so high. But always remember, it's not about the greatness of the shrine we build. You can build a shrine out of gold. It doesn't take away from the status or give to the status of any imam or any prophet. You can build that out of diamond. Whether it is dirt or gold is not the point. The point is that they have robbed us from having reverence. If you don't know a thing is there, you can't revere it. Muslims are future planners. The hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, do for your dunya as though you will live forever. But do for your akhirah, your hereafter, as if you may die today. We need to build the Baqi so that our children, our children's children always reflect on their figures and their personalities, so their role models aren't the Kardashians, aren't the Grandes, aren't the Shakurs, right? We know that they're role models, they're people. People try to dig into the psychology as to why we love heroes and why these make-believe Marvel comics are so appealing to people. It's because everyone in their heart wants a role model. It's like, well, we have Ali ibn Abi Talib on this side. We have a person with the strength of 40 men Imam Ali was miraculous that he wasn't a big muscular guy. People imagine him, he's got this wide chest and big bulging biceps. He was mid, but he was qawi fi amrillah. He was strong with the amr of Allah. That gave him amazing bodily strength. But you know, of the saddest of all these things, that even if the Baqi was built, there's one grave that we still don't know where it is. There's one grave that even if the Baqi was built in solid gold and was lined with walls of silk, and rivers flowed beneath the Baqi and the shrines of Al-Muhammad, there's one grave that we'll never know, an impression, and that is the oppression of Fatima Zahra. Assalamu alayki ya Sayyidati Mawlati ya Fatima bint Muhammad. Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alayha, is behind the door and nervous. She's behind this door and she's nervous because she knows what is to befall her husband as herself and her children, but as any mother would do, any loving wife would do. She stands and she raises her voice against the oppressors that are trying to destroy her house. And they open the door, the Zalimeen push this door and they hit her Muhsin, they compress her stomach and a nail enters and they break her ribs. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he did her ghusl, would run his hand over her ribs and notice that he was taking out. Imagine the loneliness of Imam Ali alayhi salam. When she said to him, Ya Ali, bury me in the night. Bury me in the night, Ya Ali. Don't let the oppressors pray over me. And Imam Ali, a lonely man, a broken man, the one woman he'd say, when I looked at Zahra, I don't forget all of my problems. Who are you to look at now, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, when your solace is solace? Wallah, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, 25 years after Rasulullah died, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, dye your beard, your grey. He says, I'm still mourning my brother Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaykum ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. How many does he have to lose? And how even if we go to Baqi, we're still going to be robbed of Fatima Zahra and the tawassim to Fatima Zahra and the shafa'a, that we can request directly at her grave and be at her door. We are all futara, we're all masakin, we're all yatama for Al-Muhammad. وَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنقَلِبٍ ينقلبون وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.